All right, so I'm into video 10 on the Core Combat RPG course on Udemy. And of course, Rick said, don't spend too much time on your train. And as soon as he said that, I spent 3 days on the train. So actually, like, not 3 days, though, more like 4 or 5 hours. But I was really um, bothered by a couple of things that were happening when I was making the terrain. And I started fiddling around and I found out that there are some tools that are not exposed to the editor because they aren't finished. Basically, the terrain guys, I guess, missed a deadline if I read it right on one of the forums. So there's some really cool preview tools. It does change the functionality of the terrain editor quite a bit, and some of the changes are not intuitive because they're not polished yet, right? So they're just functional. You know how we expose things in the inspector, and they're not very descriptive or whatever, anyway. So we'll get to that in a minute. Let me show you how to do this. First of all, you're going to go to Edit, Project Settings. And then on the package manager, you want to enable preview packages and close that window. I'll explain why in a minute. But then go to other window here, go to package manager, and you want to come down to where it says terrain tools 3.01 preview. I'm in 2020 here, 2020.1. And then you want to install the terrain tools preview. When you do that, it changes the terrain menu on the brushes. So if I look at razor lower terrain now, this familiar brush, all of a sudden those settings that were up here on top aren't here anymore. Instead, there's a new setting called brush, and this stuff always comes in at like 100, and the brush strength comes in at 1 by default. And so brush strength of 1 is 100%. So and the brush size of 100 is way too big. So here's what it looks like if I zoom out. So it gives a nice preview, but also notice that I'm having trouble, like my mouse will not drag that, but if I stop and hover, it will. So I've got this weird delay thing going on. I was like, well, that's not usable, but over here on the corner, it's fine. What's going on here? Well, it turns out, very weird bug, but I still have the package manager window open. And if you look at the edge of the package manager window, you'll see that it is right there where I started to have trouble in my editor. So if I actually drag this window over, look at this. Okay, now it's fine. Okay, so I'm actually having there's actually a mouse problem, even though this window was hidden. There was a mouse editor error where the mouse was crossing over this and then so anyway, long story short, close that window, okay, after you do it. And so now, so it comes in as a brush size of 100, but this is where we get to talk about the shortcut keys. There are 3 shortcut keys now that are unlocked, basically, and it's A, S, and D. So A is your brush strength. You see I can reduce the brush strength quite a lot. Now notice that the brush strength, once I get my mouse to the edge of the scene view, I can't reduce the brush strength anymore. So I actually have to release the A key, come back to the center, and keep going. So you kind of got to like play it out until you get down to 0, or you can come over here and just set it. But notice that like 0.1 is not a brush strength of so 1%. So 1% is 0.01, okay? Which makes sense, right? So there's 2%, 0.02. So just it's decimal percentage now. So the inspector isn't showing the percentage as an integer number. It's showing it as the fractional number. So it's dividing it out by 100 basically. So you need to think about that. It does give a nice preview though. The reversed key, I'm on a Mac. It says left click. If we scroll this out, it says left click to raise train, hold control, and left click to lower train. So the control key is what's going to lower the train now. So here's raising, here's lowering. Okay. Brush size is controlled by the S key. All right. So again, though, when you get to the edge of the scene window, you can't change the size of the brush anymore. So you kind of have to come back and do it again. or you can just come in and set the size to like 10 and then worry about it later. But it also has this little drop down arrow that allows you to change the clamps for your maximum and minimum brush size, so you can't get it too big or too small. More cool is you have brush rotation. Of course, I've got a circle brush here, but if I get a star brush, let's zoom in a little bit. If I get the star brush out here, and you hold D down, all right, you actually rotate around. If you pull left and right, it doesn't do quite what you want it to do. You actually have to circle the mouse around the thing to get it to change the rotation, but that's kind of cool, which is actually what I was trying to do when I found out that terrain tools existed. Whoops, that was fun. Okay, so that's the new controls for the terrain tools. I'm going to go ahead and end this video now and start a new video to talk about some of the things that I did to use these tools.